UCLA need to act fast after Chip Kelly decided to step down as head coach to take over the play calling duties at Ohio State. And while the search committee was definitely filled with hot boards and top names on the market, ultimately the Bruins want a Bruin. And that's why they have brought back DeShaun Foster to take over as the new man in command. What do we think of this hire? Is it a good move for the Bruins in the Big Ten? And why is a guy like Foster perfect to at least set the tone in a new era of college football? Let's go ahead and discuss. But if you are new here, welcome on into the channel, people. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. We talk college football every single day. Recap in 2023, a look ahead to 2024, a bunch of other nonsense and news that we got going on. So if this is your daily dose of college football that you need to survive the offseason, might I recommend you hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me your thoughts on the Foster hiring. Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of bros, Big Ten fans, Bruins faithful everywhere, and college football aficionados about this channel, because we're on the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking about our favorite sport. Continue to follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson, Twitter, X, Instagram. That way, conversations surrounding college football never have to stop flowing. So, DeShaun Foster, it's about as Bruin gets. This was one of the best running backs for the team back when he was there in the late 1990s, early 2000s, finished top 5 in rushing yards all time. But he's also a guy who understands the culture, the recruiting prowess, and the consistency of the inconsistency of UCLA. Go look back at his time. He was a graduate assistant starting off in 2013, got promoted to another graduate assistant role in 2015. After that, made the jump back there as the running backs coach from 2017 to 2023, alongside Kelly for years on end, then takes a job with the Las Vegas Raiders. But 10 days after going to Sin City, he ends up following a similar pathway of Ryan Grubb, back where the home heart resides, and now he's going to be leading the command. I think this is a smart hire in 2 different avenues. Number one, it's retaining as much talent as possible. When you lose a coach, the transfer portal window opens. And now, because of it's so late in the process, you won't see Bruins go enter at this point. They have to wait until after spring practice. But for some, you bring in a new coach, new personnel, an entire staff is completely different. Something that Kelly didn't want. Actually, one of the big addendums in his contract was when he stepped down, he wanted to see as many coaches be retained as possible with a salary increase. So this is a good way to make sure we know what we have in a guy like Foster. We know what we have in a guy who's able to sell a program and, more importantly, sell a culture and a premise that has already been implemented and indoctrinated for the last few years. That automatically is going to keep probably several key names that we're at least going to consider entering the transfer portal, sticking around in Los Angeles for another season. The other reason this is a big deal is because of boosters, fans, and the team all understand the process that it will take to get to the end goal. UCLA is in hot water going into 2024. They are going to be a team that I think significantly regresses due to the constant realignment of college football. With the tectonics plate shifting, with new conferences, teams being added in, they're in a world of hurt. You look at the Big Ten next year, where does UCLA find themselves? Bottom 5, maybe at best middle of the pack at the very last spot. That's what they are. They're a team that lost 95% of their production. NIL has not been kind to the Bruins. They don't really utilize the transfer portal in an exceedingly increasing way, the same way that other programs like Oregon, like USC, like Penn State, like Michigan all use. And so this is going to be a year where I think that you realize we have to start funneling in the funds. We have to start buying into the culture. We know that we're good at baseball. We know that we're good at basketball. We know what the history of Bruins athletics is. But if we want to be a contender, viable threat every year to make the college football playoff, get a few upset wins here or there, find our way to conference championships, see ranked numbers next to our names, we have to get somebody that eats and breathes the teal blue and the gold yellow. It's the standard. That's what you need when you go to a program in a new conference, a conference where it just means more. It's not the SEC, but the more wins you get, the more opportunities you will have to actually find your way into the college football playoff. It's no longer a 4-team set. 12 teams are getting in. And I hate to break this to you folks. You know as well as I do. The Big Ten and the SEC are going to run rampant. There's a reason why Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey, when they said they were going to fix college football, it wasn't just because they were going out of their way to say that we're a better conference. They're doing that to make sure that their conferences are the highest honor every year, whether they're 9-3 or 10-2. They're not going to have any conversations about, do we put them in over a 9-3 Big 12 team, or a 10-2 ACC team that really doesn't have that compelling wins. You're going up against competition, and physical enforcement year in and year out. And this is going to be a prove it year. This is a year where you're really going to have to understand the only way that we're going to be able to actually find the right resources is by making sure we invest properly. You invest in people, you invest in cultures, you invest in personalities. And when you have a guy like Foster, somebody who knows everything about UCLA, has been there through the highs, been there through the lows, last season on staff, helped Zach Charbonnet become a second-round pick, then gets Carson Steele rolling. They have an identity, they have a force, and they can utilize that to their advantage. You have to trust the right people. Kelly was already 1 foot out the door. And a lot of people are going to say, well, why would he leave to take a coordinator job? Number one, there was no guarantee he was going to be back next year. Number two, you don't know what you're going to get with the NIL purposes, the transfer portal. Also keep in mind that we don't know what his overall record would be. And on top of all of that, boosters didn't like him. There was multiple reports coming out over the last week that boosters, fans, everyone was tired of him. In his final game as the head coach of the Bruins during the regular season, people were booing him. Attendance was at an all-time low. This is something that you know is not going to happen when you have the right person in charge. And that's Foster. Maybe he'll end up being a great coach. Maybe he'll end up being a guy that takes you to 10 wins and finds your spot in a college football playoff ranking. Maybe he'll be a guy that ends up fizzling and falling flat. But you got a Bruin. You got a guy that actually understands the lay of the culture. He understands what it takes to win. He understands the background, the betting, the recruiting areas. He gets all of that. And so now it becomes easier for boosters to hitch their wagon to someone of their own. It becomes easier for fans to hitch their wagon to someone who reminds them of themselves. It's easier for players to say, look, I'm playing underneath the guy who's been in my shoes before. He has seen what happens when you march out of that stadium and you're able to go ahead and shred your stuff on Saturdays against any opponent because he did it. He was the one in my shoes less than 3 decades ago, finding a way to pick up wins and keep production at an all-time high. I don't know if it's a good hire. We don't really know much about this hire. It's a running backs coach who wasn't a play caller, who's now likely going to retain as much of the staff as possible. But it's a good move if you're trying to keep stability moving forward. And ultimately, this late in the process, that's all you're looking for. That was a key thing that I think that when you look back at what UCLA athletic director Martin Jarmond wanted, stability, stability, stability. Bringing back somebody that has a great culture, a great identity, and exceptional relationships with those inside the locker room. That's going to, I think, at least stop the bleeding for now. Doesn't mean everyone is going to be retained, but I think it's enough to where you feel confident that most of these players can buy in, and most of these players will take the field on August 31st, donning the UCLA blue. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me your thoughts on the hiring of DeShaun Foster. Good, bad, indifferent. What's your overall predictions for the record of UCLA? This is Cole Thompson. We'll see you next time.